Ahoy! So here we are in beautiful Jane Park Plaza, right, at Jane and Alliance. This is this video I want to make for members of the Ward 5 pedestrian cyclist group and the committee, and uh, also for members of the Mount Dennis Community Association and the public in general. Just kind of, I'm going to try to outline the pedestrian and cycling situation at this spot. For basically for arriving for shopping without your car, I left my car in BC, and spots like this, you end up not having a way to do this on foot. So let's talk about the pedestrian situation. Pedestrians arrive from the south on Jane, and from the east, the southeast on Alliance, and the northeast on Dalrymple, and then of course the north and the northwest on Jane and Black Creek Boulevard here. Once they arrive, they're going to end up in a few different spots. They're going to end up here, or they might end up kind of over here if they're trying to avoid these crossings here and cross there and jaywalk instead there, which a lot of people do. Or they end up on this sidewalk here somewhere if really a lot of people cross right here instead of crossing at the crossings, the crosswalk. Because I think it's the super wide turning radius here. It's an example of giving drivers mixed messages where they're coming down this hill, they're sort of in a rush to complete their turn, and they've got this kind of this racetrack inspired road, but they're supposed to be approaching this slow enough to yield for whatever pedestrians might be there, but the road is not really telling them to do that. And it's the same thing kind of coming from north here. Drivers have a hard time getting down to the right amount of slowness to get around this corner and deal with the pedestrians and stuff with the amount of pressure that they're facing from behind, coming from both directions here. And even when driving traffic is really light, it becomes a problem. So people are kind of trying to avoid these crosswalks here and crossing right up here, also because they're arriving from this side street here, and it's not really safer to go down there and use that crosswalk, but it is also not really desirable for them. So people generally jaywalk across here, and cyclists as well will be crossing here, of course, because that's just normal. So cyclists and pedestrians are arriving, at this corner of the thing, or along the sidewalk here. And then, like I say, if you're coming in from Dalrymple on the northeast, then you're arriving right here. And this is kind of the best angle to approach this mall at. Is if you're a pedestrian or cyclist, it kind of sucks to try to get here from Jane or from Alliance, where you're sort of more likely, there's a lot more people coming in, I think potentially from Jane, than from the east side, but it's sort of the back side of the mall where you get better access, because you can just come in through this thing, and you can go through this kind of hidden this hidden little tunnel here, which is also where the only really good bike parking spot is, but there's no bike parking there. So you can come in through this tunnel. So if you're coming in from northeast and you know the mall already, then you can come in there, and then you have sidewalk access to all the stuff. And if you're coming in from Dalrymple, you can pretty much, it's like if you don't really recognize that back entrance route, and you are coming in from the east on Dalrymple, you end up in this spot where you're like, okay, so I could walk over the grass I could do this, vault over the fence or something like this, or I could go into this driveway. And this is your pedestrian access to the noticeable, if you don't already know about this other entryway. This is the available pedestrian access to the north side of the plaza. So you're walking in through here, and then either as a pedestrian or a cyclist. As a cyclist, it's not so bad because you just slowly go through. But as a pedestrian, it's like, okay, so this sidewalk is the parking lot. It would almost work because it's basically shared space road design in action where it's just parking lot style movement. But it doesn't really work because it just leads to sketchy close calls. But it also deters people from even using the place because if you come in from here as a pedestrian, you're sort of stranded. You're like, okay, so you got this spot here. The walking across here ends up being scary because drivers come through a little bit fast. And you got transit users on the sidewalk, which is like you can get access to this spot pretty easily. So there's enough room for the people waiting for the bus and the people walking through. But then up here, it's super congested. The pedestrian situation here can get mega congested because this is your western pedestrian access to the plaza, and of course it's your access to crossing over the drive-through lane of Tim Hortons, so it sucks and you're stepping over all this stuff. But this is also like a pretty busy TTC stop, and it's your pedestrian walkway south into the area because, well, I guess if you're trying to get to here, which is kind of the easier way to walk in. So this is the other area you end up in as a pedestrian. So this guy's chilling. So you're supposed to, you and all your friends are supposed to like trip through this, and then just get over to this, just through one way or the other. You're walking through the parking lot. So the thing is, with this parking lot, since we're throwing pedestrians through it, there's this kind of setup of stop signs. So coming through, it's like, so do I promenade through this spot anticipating this situation and then just negotiating with drivers as this woman's kind of doing here? This guy's trying to access the road here because there's no specific, promenade spot, and maybe that's for the best. I don't know. Maybe it just keeps everybody so in the way and so that it's safe. But if we're gonna, that's basically just implementing a total shared space thing, and if we're gonna do that, then we might as well remove the curbs and remove the sidewalks, because putting them in there basically takes all this shared space and kind of gives drivers mixed messages about how fast and danger they can go through this spot. I mean, if you're driving through here and you're not super familiar with it, it looks like the type of spot where this is for drivers, or it's like, because it's a parking lot, I guess it is fine, or it should be fine, but it leads to all this weird movement through here, and it leads to people with carts and stuff trying to figure out how they're gonna get from here through this super narrow spot where there's pedestrian traffic coming both ways, and trying to stay off this spot because the drivers are trying to get through and load and unload their vehicles. So this spot becomes ultra weird, and then people, and they're trying to get to people with carts and stuff that they're dragging. They're trying to get from there to this curb cut here, so somehow they can get through here, over through around there, and then to this sidewalk. Because there's all these people, a lot of the pedestrians are doing their shopping with like pull carts and stuff. So they are looking for the route that where they have the curb cuts, like this right here. And also, people with these like mobility devices and stuff. They're looking for these curb cuts. So they're trying to find a route through here that offers them that, but is also not going to put them in the way of like these drivers who are going through here. And unfortunately, it puts them totally in the way. So if you're trying to walk through here, you're sharing the same spot as like drivers who are trying to drive through here. If you're going through a little bit too slow, it just becomes too sketchy. And it also looks like the type of place where drivers would expect for there to be a contiguous like sidewalk situation so that pedestrians aren't in the space. So if we're going to have pedestrians being shoved through the parking lot here, we got to do an actual shared space in position where you extend the sidewalk and kind of blur it into the parking lot and get rid of the curbs and stuff, because the curbs say drive here, walk there, but then the lack of a sidewalk or path actually linking this with this, because there's no, the design of the parking lot and the sidewalks is like, okay, it's separated, but then there's no thing going from taking people from there to there. You would theoretically have to go through here, around here, cross over there, cross there, and walk down here to get from the food basics to to Jane Street, coming in from south. So that's a really weird angle. And then, like I said, from over here, you're walking in through the driveway here, or also through this weird little spot. So all of the Jane Street pedestrian traffic, assuming you don't want to walk through either a driveway, a drive-through driveway, or or this spot here, and then also basically this whole spot here. Whether you're coming from south or coming from north, all these sort of legit, pedestrian traffic is all coming in through this. So everybody who needs to pull a cart through a spot that is officially pedestrian space, coming in from west, is going through that, which is insane. And then, so this is not so, if the sidewalk was super wide, that'd be okay. But it's not even really a sidewalk. It's more like a tiny little island between the parking lot and the drive-through. It's not even really walkable. So there is no like sidewalk separated or visually suggested pedestrian promenade from the whole west side of this thing to the whole east side of it. So that leaves you, I guess, either basically going through this sidewalk here to this spot that, like I say, you would have to explore the area first. You'd have to visit them all first to clue into this, and then still you're walking in through a driveway. So this is fine for tons and tons of people, and forcing pedestrian foot traffic through these places does also change driver behavior. But it changes driver behavior for the drivers who are used to it and have already had a few close calls with pedestrians after kind of coming in for the first time and seeing a parking lot design that makes it look like there's some sidewalk somewhere for all the pedestrians who want to come through. And then the sidewalk design that makes it look like the parking lot is really for driving through. And if you're walking in from your car, you're somehow just, I guess the walking in from your car thing really does make this whole parking lot situation ultra safe. But for people who are moving super slow and with special needs, it's just, there's too much of a mixed messaging for drivers, so drivers who are unfamiliar with this situation end up bombing through here and then having some close calls and then being like, wow, I'll be careful next time. But it makes it so foreboding for pedestrians. And even just the factor of, it kind of takes a while before you realize drivers are generally being careful here. And so for a lot of people, I think they'd be too scared to even try to come through this spot. And then another issue here is the bike parking situation. Just like a lot of these little plazas, you don't really have any bike lockups. There was a bike stand there, and now it's gone. There is one informal cyclist parking spot here, which is sometimes blocked off with stuff. There is no actual proper rack anywhere in the whole facility. So there's basically the cyclist access for shopping here at the Food Basics is basically this. This is your lockup, and of course it's also the only formal pedestrian access in a spot where, like I say, it's designed to make it look like there's a formal separation of pedestrian and driving traffic. If it weren't for this curb separated setup, it wouldn't, I think, be so dangerous. But if we're going to separate out the different modes so much and have this extremely generously sized parking lot, maybe more than just one pedestrian worth of space here in the same spot that is the only viable cyclist parking in the whole plaza would be good. Probably the better bike parking spot would be under this, in this thing, which it doesn't look like it here, but this is a tunnel that sort of goes through. And so it comes through from this parking lot here to this parking lot here. So it goes through there, this tunnel. And there's enough space in there to put like an actual bike lock up. But there's also enough space in there to put some good displays and stuff. So, it'd kind of be silly to put a bike lock up there. Even though it's covered, it would be nice. When you'd have to go searching for it, like just sacrifice, one of these parking spots somewhere for a bike corral, and with one of these spots you can accommodate like 6 bikes. And that would probably do it until another wave of cyclists realizes this place is easy to park in, and then you sacrifice another one. But those are all people who aren't driving here, or also are not trying to get past this lady on the sidewalk. So I want to just also talk about this corner here, and then make a couple of just immediate specific kind of damage control recommendations for this spot. This is a weird little segment where a cyclist died here. So for a while there were these bike lanes here, but they weren't marked, but they're just sort of, the idea is it visually narrows the carriageway for drivers so that they go a little slower. So we've got this sort of bike lanes to nowhere that drop off right where you need them at the intersection, of course, leading for this extra left turn lane. And then my one recommendation, of course, there's the ghost bike for Gary Sim, who died in this spot, because the Alliance Avenue traffic gets super fast. And although there's room, I think, for a safe road, this is just not working out. The one thing that I'd recommend right now is just a simple pedestrian path linking this sidewalk here with this sort of formal sidewalk here. So the sidewalk here basically ends, and you can see what pedestrians are doing, where they're going. They want to get from here to this sidewalk so they can go southeast. I mean, it's very, very obvious. But of course, in the winter, or if you have like special mobility needs and stuff, this little path, which this is a pretty strong desire line right here. I mean, I'd say, it's time to just pave this. And well, there's just this one spot here where it's hard to mount up there. It's so silly. So I'll just fixing this, just making it easy to get from there to here. And then just some paving stones, just through to there, would be good, and through to this parking lot. Obviously, that's a very obvious connection. And through there would be a very simple paving stones exercise, but even just fixing that one spot would be good. And then the other spot is just cutting a paving stone path through where this guy's basically to this spot, and then doing a sidewalk on this side, or even just paving stones just so that you can use it year round, and so it's just barely safe. And then a speed hump type pedestrian raised crossing here, because there's enough of a sight line for it from this corner and from over there for some kind of raised crossing. And then that would accommodate people coming in from the southwest. If it's too much of a big deal to link this area over here with this, because that would just make it easier for what people are already doing, because people are jaywalking right there and then walking over the grass to get to there. People are coming in through this path here because it gets them to the sidewalk, which gets them over here. And people are coming in jaywalking across here and then making their way across. So whatever we could do, obviously people are doing that for a reason. It's because these crossings are ultra sketchy, and it's because this is the only thing this is good for is waiting for the bus. In terms of crossing into the actual shopping area, all this does is put you on this island, and then you've got like this ocean of parking lot to cross. And compared to crossing this or crossing this, going through here and then crossing through all of this, for pedestrians coming in from the south or the southwest, it's so much less onerous to just make the best of it along this, as you can see, very well-worn path. Like, if that's not a desire line, I don't know what is. And you can see it drops off right about here. Let's see. Yeah, see, it's not as strong past this spot, and that's because this is the spot where pedestrians stand around and wait, because that's where you have sight lines to cross over to there. And then I think there's also, people end up going across there. Either across there, or they end up going, like, crossing here and then sort of going around there when there's no drivers. This is what pedestrians are doing with this spot, going through there, and then you can see that's fairly well worn. So sort of doing whatever is easiest for the conditions walking through here, and that's why we're seeing a little bit of wear and tear through here, but no specific spots. That's what I'm guessing. But I think the pedestrian traffic that's going to there, they're either going around that way or they're coming around this way, because really it wouldn't be unreasonable to, if we're going to do this whole sidewalks thing here, to just run this sidewalk around here, because this is a heavy pedestrian use spot. People come around here. So that would be my no-brainer kind of suggestion for now, just to make it easier from the southwest and from the southeast, where it's kind of the most sketchy. And then from the west, just if we're shoving all the pedestrian foot traffic coming in from west through this spot here, and I guess this thing here, and this driveway here, maybe we don't need the curbs and stuff, because it's just a big obstacle course, and like every single person who needs to not jump over curbs or roll something through here is funneled through and doesn't want to walk through the driveway, is going through there. So maybe, like, look how worn that is. I mean, maybe this doesn't need to be a parking spot. Maybe it needs to be part of a pedestrian walkway, a pedestrian promenade that goes through here, and oh my God, we could lose parking spaces. Imagine how terrible that would be. Or just to make it easier to perforate through there, sacrifice those spots. Maybe that would be a good bike corral spot too. Pedestrian and cyclist area right there, just take over those 3 spots. And then people are walking through the parking lot, but maybe we could use a pedestrian promenade type of thing, since we've already got this stop sign, this set of stop signs kind of suggesting that just maybe this is the way to cross, that people are sort of, maybe that there's kind of a pedestrian promenade suggestion through there. If we're going to suggest that, maybe there should be one going through, I don't know, between the cars, or maybe push these rows apart and have more pedestrian space around the cart corral, because that probably wouldn't hurt. Just pushing a little more space into the situation at the risk of maybe eliminating some parking. Yeah, so it's not the only place in the ward that is like this, or the city that is like this, but this is kind of a combination of a bunch of the typical pedestrian and cyclist access issues that are created by just planning a whole thing around just driving in. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and so, I don't know, visit the site yourself and see what you think about it.